The Shark Deck.
Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Tampa Bay Date Night Guide. Caught up with Jim Gaffigan. Hey, Jim Gaffigan, you're known as like a clean comedian. You don't really curse or stuff. You know what they asked him. Jim said, I think I got very lucky because comedians just do what they want to do. And some of that has to do with family culture and also where you grew up. I grew up in a small town in Indiana where if you were cursing a lot, it would just seem weird. Whereas in New York City, if you're cursing a lot, just how some people talk. So there's that. But also it was a relief because my kids could look at my material and they wouldn't be offended or shocked or embarrassed. But then again, all kids are embarrassed of their parents, right? Hey, Jim, have you ever had a kid come up to you and recognize you as the voice from a children's movie? Jim said, I think the first Hotel Transylvania movie I did, which was Hotel Transylvania 3, I brought my kids, and I think that was the first time my youngest, who probably was 6 at the time, was really impressed. He was like, that's you doing the voice. Coming up, Jim has a role in Peter Pan and Wendy. Who knew that was happening? I didn't know that was happening. I learned something recording the show. How was it, Jim? Jim said it was amazing. It was filmed in the middle of the pandemic, so it's been a while, but it was so much fun. It's also one of those storylines that I don't think there's anyone in the English-speaking world that doesn't know about Peter Pan, so that'll be really exciting when that comes out, and fun for my kids to see me play Smee. Jim's out on his comedy tour called the Dark Pale Tour. Is it family-friendly? Jim said, oh yeah, it's definitely family-friendly. The weird thing about bringing kids to a comedy show is it's still PG or whatever, but little kids want to see material you've done before, you know, like when you have a little kid and they watch a movie 10 times, whereas an adult wants new material. So, like, there's an unspoken agreement between the audience and the comedian that if you're coming to a theater and I'm paying to see you, you're going to do new material, and I don't always. So I would just say that, like, sometimes kids ask, oh, he's going to do the whales joke and the bacon and the Hot Pockets, and that's not what I do in my most recent show. Vulture caught up with the awesome Sarah Sherman. She moved to LA in 2019. A few years later, she booked the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival. She did a set that included wanting to hook up with her dad. I cleaned that up. And compared a part of her body to pastrami. Think about it. Don't think about it too long. She'd done some SNL producer showcases before, did some of her character-based work, and according to Sarah, she effing sucked. This time around, she gave them her stand-up. Sarah said, it was grotesque. I talked about tying my nipples together with my long nipple hair. A few months later, she was on the show. Sarah has a workmanlike attitude about comedy. If someone's a nurse and they're going to the Comedy Cellar on a Thursday night and they paid $30 and a 2-drink minimum to be there, give them a show. Ultra got into Sarah's attire. She dresses about the same on stage and off. She was wearing heavy black boots, sticking out from a pair of blue, orange, and pink patchwork pants. Her hair is a black mullet, but she tells Vulture she's straight like a Jets football player. Her persona now has 2 levels, Sarah Sherman, who's just excited to wear googly eyes on air on SNL, and Sarah Squirm, who drinks urine. Sarah said, what's fun now is that my audience is broader. People who come to my show thinking, I know Sarah Sherman from TV. She has nice brown hair. Then they come to my show and they're like, oh my God, they're all horrified. That's hilarious. Last October, she played the University of Connecticut Family Weekend. They billed her as Sarah Sherman, a.k.a. Sarah Squirm. She says she bombed so badly that a heckler got a standing ovation. She's going to play a rabbi in the upcoming Adam Sandler Netflix movie called You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah. Oh my God, what is Adam Sandler making now? Detour! I think I did talk about this last summer. Let's say this from the AV Club in July. The entire Sandler clan, including Adam Sandler's wife Jackie and his daughter Sadie, are set to star in the upcoming Netflix film titled You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah, which is based on Fiona Rosenblum's 2005 young adult novel of the same catty name. The story follows 13-year-old Stacy Friedman as she prepares for her perfect day. Her well-laid plans and guest list are dramatically altered, however, when she catches her best friend Lydia kissing mega crush Andy. I could see this being a good use of Adam Sandler. If Sandler is just playing the dad and not doing whatever he was doing in Jack and Jill, Sandler might nail that. Longtime listeners know I'm not the biggest fan of Adam Sandler movies, but I'll meet Adam halfway on that one. Let's see what the man hands in. He's had 2 out of 3 good movies, which is, totally off the charts for an Adam Sandler movie, but 2 of his last 3 have been actual good movies, not curving on a grade. They both were entertaining. The basketball one, I can never remember the name of. Hustle, is it Hustle? And of course, Uncut Gems, which is the Citizen Kane of Adam Sandler movies. So, all right, Adam, let's see what you got. And I just went to head back to the Sarah Sherman article, but the rest of it is pretty naughty. I'm going to skip it. You can read it. You'll find it in Vulture. The Guardian took some questions from civilians for Patton Oswalt. Civilian number 1 said, "Hey, Patton Oswalt, how do you win over a challenging audience when performing stand-up?" Patton said, "If you're excited to be there and you make them excited, you wrap them up in your excitement. I'm always happy to be in front of an audience. I'm never like, oh God, these effing people. I want them to have a good time, and if I'm not having a good time, no one is." I like this next question. "Hey, Patton, I'm sure some baristas have murdered your name on coffee cups. Any spectacular failures in this area?" Patton said, "Yeah, there was one. I can't even remember. It was like Pavilion. It was kind of beautiful. It was so off base. I loved it, but I couldn't care less. I want to get out of there. I want my caffeine." All right, Patton, if you could choose, would you be the next James Bond or the next Doctor? Patton Oswalt said, "Definitely Doctor Who. Less having to work out. You wear heavier clothes and you don't have to worry about having your shirt off." The Hartford Courant caught up with Rich Little. Rich Little is 85 as I record this on Monday. I'm recording this in advance because I'm not around today. I'm terrified. First, because Rich Little, I was surprised to learn that Rich Little was still around. And now I'm like, what if he dies between Monday and Saturday? Wouldn't that be horrible if I kill Rich Little with this little vamp here that I'm doing? I hope Rich Little lives to be 125. Love Rich Little. Who doesn't love Rich Little? Younger audiences are like, who's Rich Little? And anybody my age is like, yeah, we know who Rich Little is, of course. Who's Rich Little? If you're growing up in the 70s, he was the guy that did impressions of everyone. Think Frank Caliendo, except it's the 70s. Got it? Yes. Rich Little, 85, is a citizen of Canada and America, became a U.S. citizen 10 years ago. Rich says the judge administering the oath asked Rich Little to repeat the Pledge of Allegiance as John Wayne. Rich Little said, "When I said in John Wayne's voice," I'm not doing it, John Wayne, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, Pilgrim." The judge fell over. He just loved that. Rich said, "Obviously, I cater to the older crowd who know who Dean Martin, Johnny Carson, John Wayne, and George Burns were, but I do get a few young people in the audience who've seen me on YouTube." Also known for presidential impressions, particularly Reagan and Nixon, Rich Little has added Joe Biden to his current routine. He does not do Trump or Obama. He says his impressions have never been mean-spirited. He's aware that contemporary political humor can be divisive. Rich says people are more sensitive now and everything has to be politically correct, so it's a little tougher to imitate politicians these days compared to 30 or 40 years ago. I was talking about this last weekend about presidential impressions, and it used to be like everyone did the same Reagan. You could say anything as long as you went, well, I'm hosting a podcast. And then there was the generic Nixon where you just dropped down and you were like, nobody has nailed Biden, and here's my theory on why. Because Biden speaks so slowly in real life, if you did a true Biden, you'd be too slow for comedy. That's why it doesn't work. Nobody ever nailed Obama either. Jamie Foxx does a pretty good Obama. And from Crosscuts, when Joey Clift, a citizen of the Cowlitz Indian tribe, was growing up, the only representation of indigenous people on TV he remembers seeing were racist native mascots or native people being shot in the back in John Wayne films, perhaps by Rich Little doing an impression. Who knows? Fortunately, multiple professors in college encouraged his interest in comedy, and Clift is now leveraging his talent to create authentic representations of native people in comedy and on TV. His most recent project is a 3-part short film series for Comedy Central called Gone Native. The final short, which was recently released, is called Dear Legendary Horror Author Stephen King. And instead of using Indian burial grounds in your books, have you thought about using European burial grounds? Love it. And he told a great story from his personal life. "I was dating a woman a few years ago who shook me awake with a look of absolute panic in her eyes at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday because she needed to tell me when she was 5 years old, her mom dressed her up like Pocahontas from the Disney movie, and she had to apologize for it." That's some hookup. That's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.
Hello, I am Mark Francis, host of a daily podcast about the British royal family called Palace Intrigue. Did you see what Meghan Markle did in her latest documentary? Or what Prince Harry said in his new book? Well, the kings and queens and princes and princesses are ready to explode. Andrew is ready to implode. Royal sources are jumping at the bit. The in-laws just can't stop. The UK tabloids are about to burst. Americans can't get enough. The kids can't get any cuter. The press can't get any uglier. And Wills and Kate? Well, they're just wonderful. Get your daily dose of gossip and news from the world's most royal family. Follow Palace Intrigue on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your shows.